はい、ありがとうございます。それで、このセッション1、2の説明でございますが、山名様、小野様、新川様のご発表に関しましては、私、上津が進行させていただきます。山内様、野田様、金子様に関しましては、畑様が進行していきます。なお、非常に関心を持たれているセッションでもありますので、発表終了後に質疑応答の時間を若干取りたいと思っております。今ちょっと時間が伸びてしまったんですが、それでも取れる範囲で取りたいと思っております。なお、時間の関係上、質問が多い場合には、後日発表者から ICRP のホームページを介して回答をいただきたいと思っております。それではセッションに入りたいと思います。セッション1ポツ2の1、福島第一原子力発電所の廃炉に対する組織体制ということで、山名様、よろしくお願いいたします。
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ueza. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. So good afternoon, everybody. So firstly, I'd like to thank ICRP, JAEA, and the organizers of this workshop for giving me this precious opportunity. And I'm so happy to be connected with you. So I'm serving as the head of the NDF, which is a government-affiliated corporation to manage and support the Fukushima Daiichi decommissioning. And I'm here to explain how the Fukushima Daiichi decommissioning has been progressing with the assistance of the National Institutional System. Please note that I will call Fukushima Daiichi 1F for short. So I'd like to share the understanding on Japanese varieties of activities to respond to the aftermath of the 1F accident. This picture shows the entire national effort. On the left, as listed in the yellow box, these emergency responses were urgently taken right after the accident. But after confirming that the crisis has settled down within 2011, the responses to the accident consequence, categorized as A, and the improvement of nuclear safety as B, have been vigorously pursued. Category A on the right covers the efforts to recover from the damages. The recovery of the suffered areas, such as the environmental remediation and the reconstruction of the society, as well as a legal compensation to the victims, are important subjects for the reconstruction. But in parallel with this, the cleanup and decommissioning of the site is the indispensable task for removing the existing high radiological potential risk. So let me give you briefly the current status of the 1F decommissioning. Since the accident in 2011, various measures were taken, and then 4 damaged reactors are now controlled quite safely. Works to remove spent nuclear fuels from damaged reactor buildings are progressing, and tasks to improve the radiological effect on the environment have been executed. We believe we have succeeded in achieving certain stability for controlling the risk at the site. I can say that we have already come into the new stage for mid and long-term cleanup, and for this new stage, a responsible initiative of Tokyo Electric Power Company Limited will be essential, but at the same time, cooperative activities by the relevant organizations is necessary at the national level. The organizational structure to underpin the 1F decommissioning is shown in this schematic. In accordance with the legal framework, TEPCO has the ultimate responsibility for both compensation and decommissioning, while maintaining its duty to supply electricity. However, because the TEPCO's financial resource was quite limited and it has not been prepared for the decommissioning, the government decided to provide financial support to TEPCO as well as to supervise its business. For the purpose of embodying the supports from the government, which were requested by the 2 acts for the preparation of the nuclear disaster, our organization NDF was established through a new legislation in the autumn of 2011. For this purpose, by accepting the national bond, NDF supplies huge money to TEPCO to make it conduct the compensation to the victims, and at the same time, NDF invests to TEPCO to have a majority of voting rights. Regarding with the decommissioning, in the frame of the Nuclear Disaster Act, with a recognition that the site is still in an emergency state, the Nuclear Emergency Response Headquarters of the government takes a strong administrative lead in deciding on a policy for the 1F decommissioning. This policy, named as Mid- and Long-Term Roadmap, works as a main pillar of the cooperative activities, and all the relevant organizations ought to follow this. In order to provide more practical supports to the decommissioning, we have been working to solidify the technical strategy of the decommissioning. NDF periodically updates the technical strategy for implementing the decommissioning to share with the related entities and the government. In parallel, NDF manages the decommissioning fund, which I will elaborate later, and oversees the project management of TEPCO. In addition, NDF supervises and coordinates the relevant R&Ds subsidized by the government. As for the safety assurance, Nuclear Regulation Authority, NRA, regulates the safety of the decommissioning from an independent standpoint. Here I will explain the history over this decade. The Emergency Response Headquarters of the government was established in March 2011, and the first decommissioning policy was issued in late 2011, when the cold shutdown status of the damaged reactors were barely achieved, and this was the very beginning of the policy-led long-term decommissioning challenge. This government-led system was substantially strengthened by the establishment of the Interministerial Council for 1F D&D in 2013. Prior to this, the Nuclear Regulation Authority was established in September 2012, and a specially improvised regulation was posed to 1F decommissioning as a specified nuclear facility. In 2013, Japanese private sectors funded a consortium, IRID, to jointly proceed with the development of necessary technologies. In 2014, TEPCO established 1F D&D engineering company to specialize its decommissioning work, and NDF was reformed to fulfill the new role of facilitating the decommissioning. Two recent remarkable events are the Decommissioning Reserve Fund, established in NDF in October 2017, and the Mid- and Long-Term Decommissioning Action Plan, formulated by TEPCO in 2020. In order to secure continuous and steady financial supply for this long-term challenge, a new fund system was legally established in 2017. In this decommissioning reserve fund system, TEPCO is obliged to deposit about $2 billion in every fiscal year from its revenue of electricity business to the special reserve account managed by NDF. The expense for the annual delivery is to be withdrawn based on the annual plan of decommissioning, which is formulated collaboratively with NDF. The excess of the annual deposit is to be accumulated in the reserve account to prepare for the future big operation, like fuel debris retrieval from the damaged reactors. We expect about several tens billion dollars of accumulation and expect that this can cover the completion of the fuel debris retrieval over a period of 30 to 40 years. What I want to emphasize is that this reserve fund system assists and enhances the oversight by NDF of the program and budget management of TEPCO. So let me show you the timeline of the decommissioning along with the roadmap. On the upper part of this page illustrates the international recognition on the typical decommissioning steps for accident facility for comparison. The lower part shows the simplified timeline defined by the latest roadmap. Now we are in the phase 2, in which removal of spent fuel from Unit 3 and preparation for the start of fuel debris retrieval have progressed successfully. The phase 2 is expected to end in 2021, and the trial retrieval and the gradual expansion of fuel debris retrieval will start as the first implementing unit within the phase. In the first decade of the subsequent phase 3, removal of spent fuels from all reactor units shall be completed, and a small-scale fuel debris retrieval at the first implementing unit will proceed. It will be gradually scaled up to start full-scale operation around 2031. In phase 3-1, that is the first decade of phase 3, the milestones for some important operations are also defined, such as reducing the volume of contaminated water generation, reducing the stagnant contaminated water in the buildings, and enhancing storage of the contaminated solid wastes. So let me touch upon the evolution of the past decommissioning strategies. The first roadmap prepared by the government was issued in late 2011, by which a holistic and basic approach for the mid and long-term challenge was shown. As for the technical strategic plan, since the basic concept and the directions based on risk-based strategy were presented in the first version issued in 2015, it has brought up the updated strategic directions with the specific technical measures. In the Strategic Plan 2017, published by NDF, a fuel debris retrieval policy based on the step-by-step approach was proposed and requested of TEPCO to begin the preliminary engineering for fuel debris retrieval. And in 2019, NDF proposed Unit 2 as the first implementing unit for the small-scale fuel debris retrieval. The latest version of Strategic Plan 2020, issued 2 months ago, focuses on the significance of the enhancement of TEPCO's attitude towards the responsible full-scale delivery in the future. The roadmap of the government has been revised 5 times since 2011, through which the major directions were updated with some latest important milestones of the major processes, such as the start of the fuel debris retrieval, spent fuel removal, and reduction of stagnant contaminated water. Following these strategic requests by NDF and the government, TEPCO's first mid- and long-term decommissioning action plan 2020 was issued early this year. This picture schematizes the organizational structure to conduct R&Ds with subsidy from the government. From the viewpoint of the urgency and the necessity of the developments that enables the acceleration of the decommissioning, the 2 ministries have subsidized technical entities with motivations. The bigger fund is by METI, as shown on the left side, in which about $130 million per year is provided to the applicants of private companies and institutes such as IRID, JAEA, and some other domestic and international companies. Technical subjects required for waste management, internal inspection of the devastated reactors, and fuel debris retrieval are the typical subjects of this METI fund. In parallel with this, MEXT subsidizes JAEA to conduct an open call research fund for basic researches and human resource developments by universities. NDF plays the role to plan and manage the R&Ds with Medifund and to coordinate the entire scheme of this picture. It is expected that this R&D subsidy system will be enhanced and improved to meet the first-hand needs from the implementations at the site. Now, I'd like to conclude my talk, expecting that more specific information will be given from the following presentations. Thank you for your attention.
はい、ありがとうございました。それでは続きまして、東京電力ホールディングス株式会社小野様から、福島第一原子力発電所における廃炉作業の現状と今後の課題というタイトルで発表をお願いいたします。
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Akira Ono, the president of the Fukushima Daiichi Decontamination and Decommissioning Engineering Company, FDEC of TEPCO Holdings. Today, I'm pleased to meet you via the internet in spite of the current situation. And time flies, and it's been nearly 10 years since the accident. Thanks to the effort of our workers, we have come to a point where we can engage in the work steadily in a planned manner. As for off-site area, evacuation orders have been lifted for the areas which hosted Fukushima Daiichi as well as the surrounding areas. So, we have become more and more careful in dealing with our decommissioning activities to secure peace of mind and safety for local residents. I'd like to show you some examples in my presentation. In the final part, I'd also like to touch on an overview of our decommissioning action plan, which I believe will contribute to reconstruction of local communities. And prior to my talk about the main agenda, let me share with you the current situation regarding the COVID-19 in Japan. Currently, the number of the new cases per day is over 2,000 nationwide. However, the numbers in Fukushima Prefecture are quite low compared to other areas in Japan due to its remoteness from hotspots such as Tokyo. At Fukushima Daiichi, we have introduced several countermeasures as shown here. Furthermore, employees are required to refrain from going back and forth between Fukushima and the metropolitan area. Thanks to these measures, we have succeeded in blocking the virus, and to date, the number of cases at Fukushima Daiichi has remained at 0. Now let's move on to our main topic. These are the points I'd like to talk about today. Now I'll start with fuel removal. Spent fuel and fresh fuel are stored in the pool located in the upper part of the reactor buildings. Fuel removal is an indispensable task for reducing risk at Fukushima Daiichi. This slide shows the overall progress from Unit 1 to 4. The first unit to have fuel removal completed was Unit 4. At Unit 3, removal work began in April last year and at present is going on as scheduled. As of November 18th, and 434 out of 566 fuel assemblies have been removed. We intend to complete the work by the end of March next year. For other units, preparations for fuel removal are underway. At Unit 1, the removal of rubble started on the north side in 2018. On the south side in October, we completed installing a prop to support the damaged fuel handling machine from below, since it is very important to mitigate the impact by falling objectives on the fuels, just in case. At Unit 2, we investigated the spent fuel pool situation this June using an underwater ROV and confirmed there were no additional obstacles to the future fuel removal process. And next, let's look at our future plans for fuel removal at Unit 1 and Unit 2. As I mentioned earlier, our first priority is to secure the peace of mind and safety of local residents. So we've adopted the removal methods shown here to reduce dispersion of the radioactive dust to the lowest level possible. The picture on the left side shows a big cover that we are going to install at Unit 1 in the near future. Tasks including rubble removal on the south side and fuel removal will be conducted inside this cover. The picture on the right side shows a blueprint for Unit 2. As you can see, we've decided to let the existing structure as it is and use the south side as a platform for the fuel removal. We are going to undertake the removal work from the mid-2020s. Let's turn to fuel debris retrieval. This slide shows a rough illustration of fuel debris distribution. Analysis of accident transit and internal investigation results, including muon survey, have helped us understand the assumed distribution of fuel debris. At Unit 1, we can say almost all fuel debris has dropped to the bottom of its PCB. At Unit 2, it is assumed that some of the molten fuel dropped to the bottom of the RPB or to the lower portion of the PCB, while some still remain within the core. At Unit 3, we presume that its situation lies between Unit 1 and Unit 2. Considering a few factors such as information gained so far and lower dose rate compared to other units, we have chosen Unit 2 to be the first unit for fuel debris retrieval. We are going to start this in 2021. It is planned as an experimental project on a very small scale. As you can see at the bottom, we are currently developing a retrieval device in the UK. The device is composed of three kinds of equipment. One is a robot arm made of high-strength stainless steel. It is about 22 meters at maximum in length, so it can reach inside the PCB. The second is an enclosure. It houses the robot arm and is capable of containing radioactive materials. The third is a connection pipe, which connects the enclosure and the penetration hole. In the experimental retrieval, we are going to collect some grains of debris using a metal brush or a vacuum container, which you can see in the picture in the upper left. Going forward, we are going to expand the scale of retrieval based on the knowledge we obtain through this experimental retrieval. Let me move on to the improvement of the work environment. After the accident, as a result of the fallout, radioactive materials spread all over the site. Since then, we have been removing contaminated trees, rubble, and soil. Moreover, we reduced the dose coming from the water stored in tanks at an early stage by purifying it mainly with the ARP system. In addition, to further reduce dose rate and prevent radioactive dust from being stirred up, we also paved the ground where weed and soil had been completely removed. Due to the improved work environment, airborne contamination has decreased to a large degree. Therefore, we can work in lighter clothing. Technically speaking, just after the accident, every worker had to wear full-face respirator and coverall everywhere on the site, as shown in this map on the left. But now, as you can see in the right side, the areas where workers should put on such equipment accounts for only 4%. These areas are shown in red and yellow on the right. In the green-colored areas, people can work in lighter equipment, as shown in this picture on the right. The exposure dose of workers has also been reduced. At the time of the accident, the average exposure dose per month reached around 20 millisievert per person. This data was for shift workers and other operators working for TEPCO at the time. However, the recent monthly dose for workers is somewhere between 0.2 millisievert and 0.4 millisievert. Having said that, the workers at Fukushima Daiichi don't work every day, so the yearly average dose is about 2.5 millisievert per person. Going forward, we are going to launch two initiatives. One is the further improvement of the work environment. In terms of improving the work environment, we will introduce PPE exchanging places at zone borders to prevent the spread of contamination. In doing so, we are going to introduce no mask zones and no radiation control zones so that the site workers can work comfortably without any risk of contamination. The other is the enhancement of radiation control so as to prepare for the upcoming fuel debris retrieval. As a precaution against the possible spread of alpha nuclides, we are going to strengthen site management more thoroughly and such as monitoring on site. We will also introduce bioassay facilities in addition to whole body counters to assess exposure if by any chance intake of radioactive materials should occur. I'd also like to talk about our policy concerning the measurement of crystal lens exposure. The coming law revision in fiscal 2021 in Japan is requiring us to limit the dose for the crystal lens to 50 millisievert per year and 100 millisievert every 5 years. In advance of the law's enforcement, TEPCO began efforts such as setting a voluntary target value of 20 millisievert per year and measurement of the dose near the lens if needed. As a result of these measures, no workers were exposed to more than 20 millisievert in the first half of fiscal 2020. We'll take additional steps down the road if necessary. Finally, let me talk about our views on the partnership with local communities. As you can see in the upper part of this slide, the decommissioning of Fukushima Daiichi is being implemented based on the time frame in the mid- and long-term roadmap formulated by the government of Japan. Currently, we are in phase 2, and we will enter phase 3 after we undertake fuel debris retrieval planned in 2021. In the first 10 years of phase 3, multiple work processes will be implemented to achieve the milestones shown here. We issued the mid- and long-term decommissioning action plan this March. It aims to detail the major work processes to fit the milestones. One of its features is that you can understand the priority and how one process relates to others. That enables us to proceed with our work safely, steadily, and efficiently looking to the future. As for the relationship with local communities, we hope that this plan will help local residents understand how our work proceeds. We also hope that this plan can lead to encouraging local firms to participate in our undertaking. That covers just about everything I wanted to say today. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
皆さん、こんにちは。経済産業省の新川と申します。福島第一原子力発電所の廃炉にかかる
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shinkawa from Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. As for the government organization of the decommissioning of the Fukushima No. 1 plant, Mr. Yamada already discussed, and also the status of the decommissioning of Fukushima No. 1 that Mr. Ono of TEPCO already discussed. So from my side, I would like to give you the explanation of the handling of the ALPS treated water milestone of Fukushima Daiichi NPS. Please look at the first picture in front of you. This is the inside of the plant. You can see that the bluish and grayish tanks are lined up, and these are just a part of them. And right now, in the premise of the plant, there are more than 1,000 of these tanks containing that contaminated water. That contaminated water, however, that after that the treated contaminated water are contained here after removing the nuclei. As Mr. Yamana already explained to you, that the Fukushima Daiichi decommissioning is a continuous risk reduction activity. Please also look at the overall picture of the concept. Decommissioning is a continuous risk reduction activities, we think, to protect the people and the environment from the risks associated with the radioactive substances. And safety and the steady decommissioning on site is a prerequisite for the reconstruction of the Fukushima. Also, this is something that we believe in, and because of this, that these are the milestones that we would like to observe in the mid and long-term roadmap jointly decided by the government and TEPCO. It takes 30 or 40 years, and our priority of the safety will grapple with this decommissioning. And the detail of each item is already explained by TEPCO. Next, I would like to move on to the difference between the contaminated water and treated water. The level of the groundwater outside is controlled to be higher than that of the water in the building to remove the contaminated water from the flowing out. The water for the cooling fuel debris gets contaminated and stagnated in the building. As a result, the groundwater keeps flowing into the building, and the contaminated water keeps generated in the buildings every day. But as I have mentioned, there is a stark difference between the contaminated water and the OPS treated water. After the accident, that each day that the nuclides containing water is a contaminated water is generated every day. Please look at the picture. This is the brownish coffee-like contaminated water. After the purification treatment, you can see that on the right-hand side, this is the OPS treated water. Most of the nuclei are already removed, except the tritium. It looks to be very transparent and clear, but as I have mentioned, the tritium is still in the treated water, cannot be removed. That the rainwater, groundwater should be reduced in order to reduce the volume of the treated water. That because of the accident, that the rainwater cannot prevent it, but that the building is covered right now, and also by repairing that the pipes that we are controlling the rainwater, and also the dry up. The tower is dried up. But that we can reduce the level of the water of the reactor by reducing the groundwater, and then this is the way, effective way of controlling of that groundwater seeping into the ground. Subdrains and frozen soil waters and walls, these are combined together for controlling the groundwater level. Now, thanks to these the measures, that the generated water used to be 540 square meters per day, cubic meters, but after the treatment, the daily production of the water is down to 180 cubic meters. And instead of one tank, new tanks for 2 days, or one new tank for 1 week is now sufficient to contain the water. Now, the height of the tank is about 13 meters. And for preventing the leaking of the water, as you can see, this is a dike covering that the entire that the tanks, even though that the water is leaked out, it never reaches to the beach. It is already demonstrated. Now, how to deal with the treated water? There are 2 ways: the vapor release and discharge into the sea. These are the practical ways. Why? Because that the METI, that the experts committee that reviewed 6 years, and out of 6 candidates, that both option 1 and 2 are recommended to be realistic because of the precedents and the track record. And discharge into the sea can be implemented more reliably, considering of the discharge facilities operation and the proper monitoring method. The Japanese government has decided one or the other, and they are hearing the opinions from the many experts right now. And what are the IAEA's findings on the disposal options of the treated water? In February of this year, the statement was made by the IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi in February, and he visited the Fukushima number 1. And IAEA, he says, that considers that the disposal options discharge into the sea and the vapor release are technically feasible and in line with the international practice. And in April, the ALPS subcommittee's report are already reviewed by the IAEA. And they say that once a decision is taken on the way forward, the IAEA would be ready to assist in its implementation. And for example, in the radiation removal, about 70% of the treated water stores a tank contains radionuclides other than the tritium at the concentration which exceeds the regulatory standard, because in early years the ALPS treatment has been carried out by prioritizing the volume of the water treatment to quickly reduce the radiation impact to out of the site. And there are also cross-filter permits the troubles and the other problems. So the typical from September that they decided to repurification of the treated water will be commenced to the regulated standard other than tritium. Pre-treatment, that is. And in any case, all ALPS treated water will be sufficiently diluted in the case of the discharge to the environment in order to also meet the standard for tritium. Dilution should be sufficient. However, that purification, not dilution, the purification until the less than the standard can be achieved. And from August of this year, that the TEPCO decided to consider the C14, which accounts for the 2% of the treated water. However, the TEPCO says that they will work hard to remove the C14 as of the August of this year. So after that implementation, the impact of the radiation to human health as a result of the discharge is very small, according to our idea. Even if the entire amount of the ALPS treated water containing tritium, the other radioactive materials were to be disposed in 1 year, the impact will be no more than 1/1,000 of the exposure impact of the natural radiation in Japan. The evaluation is assumed that 1 year discharge, however, that is not across the board discharge of 1 year, so that it will be even smaller than this. So these pictures are the picture of the simulation done by the TEPCO, simulation of the diffusion. First of all, the vapor release. There is no diffusion simulation model available for vapor because of the weather impact. The lower 2 pictures are the simulation pictures of the discharge into the sea. On the left-hand side, assuming the 22 trillion becquerel discharge per year. And on the right-hand side, this is 100 trillion becquerel discharge per year. Please look at all this. The areas where the tritium concentration exceeds its background level are limited around the Fukushima Daiichi plant, and the level of the tritium concentration around the plant is far lower than that set by the WHO drinking water. So even though that the discharge into the sea will not have the impact on the near sea and far sea both. Now, considering the opinion received, that the government will decide its basic policy, including the measures against a possible reputational damage, based on the report issued by the ALPS subcommittee report issued in February. And based on the government basic policy, TEPCO will be the party determining the specific method and will obtain the approval from the Nuclear Regulatory Authority, and then we'll start the preparatory work. What I'm talking about is after the permission and then the policy making by the policy and the implementation. The discharge takes 2 years. Lead time is 2 years. So once again, I would like to repeat for avoiding the misunderstanding. Even though the government decided the policy, that the discharge wouldn't start right away. So this concludes my presentation, but I would like to ask many people to understand that the opposite treatment water and discharge, we have to continue providing that clear and accurate and transparent information to the global community. Thank you.
はい、続きまして、IRIT 国際廃炉研究機構研究開発機構の山名でした。山名でした。山内理事長、よろしくお願いいたします。
はい、画面の共有もできたかと思いますので、ご説明させていただきたいと思います。今、ご紹介いただきました、JA の村でございます。畑さん、ご紹介ありがとうございます。私の方からは、JAEA、ジャパンアトミックエナジーエージェンシーがですね、福島第一原子力発電所
Thank you for your introduction. I am Koichi Noda from Japan Atomic Energy Agency. Thank you for your introduction. I will be talking about the decommissioning R&D work that is being conducted by JAEA. First of all, about the overview of JAEA. JAEA, the Japan Atomic Energy Agency, is the only national institute for nuclear research and development, and therefore we have research centers across Japan, from Horonobe in the north to Ningyo-Toge to the south. And among these institutes, the biggest center we have is in Ibaraki Prefecture, which is to the south of Fukushima Prefecture. In Tokai, in Owarai, these are the biggest centers we have. And in these centers, we have research reactors, as well as accelerators, and other facilities for dealing with nuclear waste. In Fukushima, JAEA originally did not have any center there, but after the accident, we have been building the systems to respond to the accident. This shows the organization for the JAEA. JAEA has various sectors. We have the R&D sector, and here we have 6 divisions. One of them is Fukushima R&D division. So this is one of our biggest divisions, and this is a permanent division set up by JAEA. And of course, the decommissioning in Fukushima is a very complicated task, and therefore, in addition to the Fukushima R&D division, we have other sectors, including the center in Ibaraki, and we are working across these other divisions to promote work in Fukushima. And I would now like to explain some of the R&D activities undertaken by JAEA. At JAEA, we are working on decommissioning and environmental restoration of Fukushima based on 3 pillars. The first one, on the left-hand side, is the development of R&D infrastructure. And on the right, this is for R&D for decommissioning. And the third one at the bottom is the R&D for environmental restoration in Fukushima. Due to the accident, the radioactive substances have spread in Fukushima Prefecture, and therefore we are working on decontamination work as well as environmental monitoring and research on how the movement of cesium within the prefecture And this is a history of our division. As shown in the slide, JEA is the only national institute on nuclear research and development, and according to the law on nuclear, we have continued with activities. And on March 11, 2011, when the earthquake occurred and the nuclear accident, JEA staff members went into the Fukushima prefecture to engage in environmental monitoring and work on the testing of decontamination, and also the use of whole body counters for internal exposure measurements, and also had many public meetings for the local community. And after that, the national government have been working on creating the mid to long-term roadmap on decommissioning, and we have also been working on the research on the decommissioning efforts. And in 2014, as I mentioned, our division on Fukushima R&D was established. And this is an official department within JEA to work on the after accident. And since then, each year we have a new center in Naraha, a Center for Remote Control Technology. In 2017, in Tomioka, we have an international collaborative laboratory. And in 2018, we have established the Okuma Analysis and Research Center. As for our research and R&D sites in Fukushima Prefecture, we have 3 centers and 5 bases. On the left top is the monitoring Fukushima Prefecture Center for Governmental Creation, which is conducting monitoring. And this has been monitoring in Minamisoma, Amiharu. As for a decommissioning R&D, this is mostly concentrated in the Hamadori region. One is in Naraha-Narek, and also one in Tomioka Clouds, and the Okuma Center in Okuma. And these are engaging in research for decommissioning. These shows the outlines of each research centers. The first one is Narek. This center is working on creating large-scale mock-up facilities, and these are built to conduct prior testing before they can be moved to the actual site. And we do have quite a large-scale facility here. And also we have the administrative building and the research building. And on the right bottom side, as already mentioned by TEPCO and IRID, we are working on the test removal of the fuel debris, including the robot arms, and the preparations are underway. And as you can see on the top hand side, this shows the virtual reality system where you can check the situation at the site virtually. Next is the Okuma Center. We have a research and analysis being conducted at the center. Here we analyze high radiation dose rubble debris, and this facility is now under construction. And we will have located this very closely next to the nuclear power plant in Fukushima Daiichi. And these will deal with high radiation debris and other waste, and therefore we have various concrete cells and other covers. And in addition, we have the glow boxes and fume hood. And on the right-hand side, the laboratory 1. This is now under construction, and we are expecting to be able to start operation from next year. This shows the overall R&D situation. And there are other materials available that are more easy to understand. But on the left-hand side is the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry budget is being provided to conduct R&D. And the NDF is do the selection of the project and is managing the budget. On the right-hand side is the Ministry of Education that is being conducted under their budget, basically involving long-term R&D. And for these projects, we work with other international community to leverage their expertise. And JEA is at the center of this network. And obviously, JEA is a member of IRID, and we do promote international exchange, so to avoid inefficiencies, and we do make proposals directly. And as shown at the bottom, the JEA is working to collaborate with universities and research institutions in Japan. So we do have a research hub using the budget provided. And on the other hand, as for the basic fundamental research, we do not want to do research for the research sake. We want to conduct research that will actually be practically applied at the site. And therefore, as for our fundamental research, we work with NDF and TEPCO, and we share information with them so that our research and development can be applied to the situation on the ground. And we do have this fundamental research map, and based on this research we are conducting our research, and this is available from CLAD's website. And JEA is conducting fundamental research, and obviously we do have our own research as well. And this, as a member of the IRID, we do have our research projects, and we also have our own research project as shown in the slide. And we are focusing particularly on the analysis of fuel debris and on the accident progression evaluation. We do simulation on what actually happened within the reactor. We also do analysis on waste management and how we should approach waste management. And we additionally have a remote sensing technology, and we develop these technology so that can be applied at the nuclear site. And in addition, we have various international corporations with experts around the world. And in particular, we have US, France, UK, these advanced nuclear countries we cooperate with, and CLAD's Tomioka International Center, they have received visitors from US and UK. And of course we do have OECD, NEA and IAEA. These collaboration with these organizations is particularly important. We are working, making adjustments and utilizing the expertise from the international community. And in addition to R&D, we also engage in human resource development, as the decommissioning will span over the period of 30 to 40 years. In order to continue our work, we need to develop the next generation of scientists. And therefore, we organize various kind of programs for students from universities as well as a National Institute of Technology colleges. And at the center, as you can see, we organize robot competition for decommissioning. And this is mainly conducted in Naraha Center. We conduct annually, the competition is conducted annually. And even though we do have the COVID-19, we are planning to hold this competition in December. And in addition, we invite young scientists from around the world to Fukushima to have discussions on the state of R&D and their future directions. And we have a Fukushima Research Conference is the venue. As for the future prospects, as already mentioned, we do have been working with fuel debris and waste, and we do have JEA has the expertise, have a accumulated expertise over for many years, and so we would like to make proposals based on this expertise. And in addition, we look at what actually happened at 1F and how we can use what we have learned to increase safety for the future. And of course, international cooperation, this is particularly important. OECD, NEA, as well as other countries, we would like to promote further collaboration. And furthermore, we will work on the human resource development for the next generation, and as well as to work together with local enterprises in Fukushima Prefecture. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
ありがとうございました。野田理事ありがとうございました。続きまして最後のプレゼンテーションでございます。規制庁の金子審議官、よろしくお願いいたします。
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Hata-san, Chair Lady. I'm Shu Kaneko, working at the Nuclear Regulation Authority Japan, working for the Fukushima Daiichi regulation. Much appreciate the current challenges to reduce the risk of additional radiological contamination from Fukushima Daiichi site. Those are, for example, another tsunami would wipe out the site and bring highly contaminated matters into the ocean and such as such. So now I'm preparing for the sharing the materials. I'm sorry. Come. なんかビデオのやつの中でスクリーンシェアをしないといけないんじゃないの？映ってる？ Okay. So now you can see the plan map of the Fukushima Daiichi site, and the upper side is the east, the sea side, Pacific Ocean. I'm sorry. The next one. Yes, yes. And to the left, the north. And you can see the green colored, the green framed pillar aligned in the ocean, seashore. That is the spent fuel pool in the unit 1 through unit 3. And also blue framed pillars, which is relatively tall, is sort of the high concentration radioactive matters with large amount and in unstable situation. So I'm very much focusing on these kind of matters to reduce the risk of the Fukushima Daiichi site. The next one, please. Okay, so the spent fuel pool I mentioned, and also there are 3 sort of residues which is created from the treatment of the contaminated water, and also to reduce the dose at the building. So in terms of the spent fuel, CDO Ono-san, who is working in TEPCO, was introduced seeing the current situation. So I skimmed the explanation. The next one, please. So unit 3 appearance, originally right after accident was on the left. and which is now covered for the spent fuel removal. The next, please. Almost 80% of the spent fuel in the pool was removed to the common pool, and still now the work is going on. The next one, please. So the current challenge is the sort of difficult part of handling the deformed handle fuels, which is caused by the rubbles and heavy structures destroyed from the hydrogen explosion and fall into the spent fuel pool. So you can see the 16 kind of images capture the handle situation of the fuel assemblies. So the TEPCO is now preparing a new attachment to fuel handling machine, which can grab heavily deformed handles, and also exploring methodologies to resolve the interference of debris or the rubbles, which is the obstacles to handle and pull out the fuel assemblies. Next one, please. So in terms of Unit 2, which is not experienced the hydrogen explosion, so the structure of the building is healthy, but inside of the building is highly contaminated with the radiation dose. So TEPCO is now currently preparing for the using cleanup for the little bit of contamination in the working area, and also installing shield and radiation protective measures are to be installed. Okay, complete. So Unit 1, as it's shown in the TEPCO slide, which is now currently cleanup phase of the operating floor, which is full of the rubbles and also the destroyed structures such as roof crane and the fuel handling machines and oil plug. And next one, please. So TEPCO is planning to have support for the heavy structures, and also to protect the spent fuel pool for the falling of the additional rubbles and heavy structures. So you can see in the left-hand images at the pink colored one, the SFP large blanket right over the spent fuel pool, which is actually the inflating mat filled with air mortar in this year. And the TEPCO is planning to cover a whole area of the operating floor of the Unit 1, and then the removal of the spent fuel pool is going to be done. Thank you. The Unit 4, the spent fuel removal was done, and it's now ready for another phase of the decommissioning. Okay, the next one, please. So the second focus is to stabilize the Arriva sludge, so-called. The next one, please. So Arriva sludge is a sort of precipitate which absorb nuclides such as cesium-137 in absorbent solution in the early phase of the contamination water treatment, and which is located in the seashore side building, and in the basement floor, the sludge is covered by the water, and TEPCO is planning to extract these sludge into the container, and the container will be moved to the higher area of the site. But still, the dose rate is very high around this area and the working situation. So the very careful consideration should be done for the application of this method. Okay, so next one, please. Okay, so the next is out slurry stored in HIC, so-called the highly integrated container. so which is located in the very south end of the Fukushima Daiichi site. Yes, and the slurry is more like the dispersed type water and the powder mixture, and which is in the HIC, which you can see in the two images on the right hand. And these include the high level of, for example, strontium or other nuclei in that containers. Okay, the next one, please. And these are sort of liquidous phase. So the TEPCO tried to have this liquidous phase into solid with a dehydration. So the mock-up scale experiment was successfully done. So the scale up and the real operation of the stabilization of these slurry is currently the challenge for the midterm risk reduction, and our regulation should be focused on the planning for the TEPCO's this kind of operation. The next one, please. Thank you. Okay, the last one is the zeolite high dose sand, which is located in the basement of the process main building and also high temperature incinerator buildings, and which is installed also in the early phase of the accident countermeasures to reduce the air dose of the surrounding area of these buildings. The next one, please. So, which is also underwater currently, which you can see in the left-hand photos, and there are several or the tens of sandbags which contains the zeolite, which absorb the many radioactive materials and in the various nuclei. And the dose rate is very high, which is shown in the sentence. So the TEPCO is now considering about the three options to stabilize these zeolites, which is suck up the sands out of the building, which is very challenging to operate. And the second one is in the middle illustration. Once in the container down the building, and in the future they are removing them into the more stable status, and solidificate all the area of the sandbags, and which is difficult to recover for the future treatment. So those options are now currently considered by the TEPCO, and we are having a kind of hearing from the TEPCO for the regulation. So those are the current challenges and the midterm challenges for risk reduction to the additional contamination for the oceans or environment. So if you are concerned with the surrounding area contamination, please look at and please focus on the project progress for this kind of area. Thank you very much for your attention.
金子さん、ありがとうございました。この時間で、
Thank you very much. So we have used up the time for this session, but we would like to extend this session for another 10 minutes to accept some questions. We do have questions in the chat also. First question is to Mr. Ono from TEPCO. As you mentioned in your presentation, that you will be dealing with the alpha radiation management. And there are some questions on that. And so can you briefly answer what you're going to do, for example, WBC or bioassay? Thank you very much for your question. So as for the bioassay, we would not be doing bioassay straight away. If there is some kind of problem, we would like to take measurement beforehand, and we do have our own standard. So based on those standards, we maybe move on to the bioassay eventually. But obviously, we have never had the experience of having to use bioassay, and therefore, when we go into the removal of debris, we need to consolidate our technology as well as the facilities. That's all from me. Thank you very much, Mr. Ono. Next, Mr. Uezu has a question. We have a question for Mr. Shinkawa from the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry related to the management of treatment water. We do have a lot of many questions on this issue. For this, how do you going to try to obtain the understanding of the people, especially for those who are not convinced? What kind of steps are you going to take? Mr. Shinkawa, please. Thank you very much for your question. We do have many questions regarding the public comment. But as for the Alps treated water, we have been doing discussions starting from 2013 within the Alps subcommittee, and we have been discussing this issue by the experts for more than 6 years, and the report will have come out in February this year. And we did have many meetings with municipalities and fishermen, and also we collected their opinions on paper. And as for the government, there has been major concern, especially about the safety of the treated water, as well as the concerns about rumors, the effect of rumors on the industry. As for the international community, we have more than 100 meetings with the diplomatic corps in Japan, as well as with the IAEA and OECD. And we did provide information at many international conferences. With respect to the government's policy on treatment water, we would like to listen to their views and to take measures that would be able to deal with such concerns. That's all for me. Thank you very much. So we have no more time, so we would like to conclude this session at this time. Thank you very much for your participation and cooperation.